So the Trump-Epstein debacle is still going strong, and in fact may get even crazier soon. And to be honest, I'm loving it. Well, I don't love the aspect that our sitting president is very likely an accomplice to the orchestrator of the most high-profile underage sex trafficking ring in at least modern history. But what I do love is the attention this is receiving. People who otherwise don't give a shit about politics are paying attention to this. For example, normie YouTubers like Critical with gigantic audiences, who usually steer away from talking about politics, have been making multiple videos about this. And I mean, it should be obvious why people who usually don't have an interest in politics are interested in this. One of the very, very few topics that unify people all across the political spectrum, including people who don't usually give a single shit about politics, is pedophilia and child sexual abuse is bad. And wanting to know the names of people who are in various different positions of power who have engaged in such horrific actions with minors should be and is an issue that transcends politics, but I'll admit, initially I was a little cynical myself. In this day and age, with so much information being thrown at your face at once, the news cycle constantly changing, I assumed people would only care about this for maybe a week at most, and then move on to the next big story that would come along. Or maybe Trump and the Republicans could concoct a new culture war issue, or something in general that would successfully distract the public away from this, and they have definitely tried. Obama committed treason by trying to undermine Trump's 2016 win. Let's revoke Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship. And a lot of the public, surprisingly, has been seeing these stunts for what they really are. Trump desperately throwing shit at the wall, hoping something sticks, and gets people to stop talking about Epstein. And it's not working. And I want this to be a thorn in Trump's ass for the rest of his days. And look, I know, Trump is probably not going to face any real legal consequences for his association with Epstein and his crimes. But the more Trump tries to distract and obfuscate from the fact that he was at the very least a very good friend of Jeffrey Epstein's, and the more he tries to change the narrative from there's no list to there is a list, but it's a fake list written by Democrats to frame me, or there is a list, but I'm not on it, and conveniently only my political enemies and notable figures who don't like me are on it. The more he buries himself in the eyes of the public because it is just so transparent what he's doing. Of course, parts of MAGA have accepted their marching orders and are trying to move on from Epstein themselves, and even claiming that they never cared about Epstein to begin with. Yeah, sure, buddy. Or even full-on rationalizing Trump's friendship with Epstein and participation in his crimes, like this shit. Okay, in Donald Trump's defense, fucking 14-year-old girls was only made a social taboo in the 1990s. My grandmother was born in 1927 and had her first child when she was 12. Teenage pregnancy only became frowned upon with the rise of Jerry Springer, and I also can be honest about the fact I was old enough to choose, seduce, and decide to fuck grown-ass men when I was 15. Sorry, I tasted vomit in my mouth. Wonder where that came from. I really don't get why women are fronting like they weren't fucking 40-year-olds at 15. Like, come on now. I'm honestly not surprised or mad at Trump for getting some 15-year-old pussy because those were the times. Good night, USA, for fucking ever. Now, if he was fucking a 10-year-old, we have a problem. But if the girls were 13 plus, who cares? Move on. Yeah, I think the glaring issues of that tweet speak for themselves, and that should be a strong enough reminder that it's a moral imperative at this point to not be going on Twitter anymore. All I have to say in response to that scree is keep posting this shit. No, really, keep posting this shit. No person who is at least halfway sane is going to read that and think, you know what, some good points were raised, and we should go easy on Donald Trump for molesting teenage girls because that was part of his natural primal urges. No, they're probably going to notice instead that a not so insignificant portion of MAGA is quicker to defend sexually abusing minors than to condemn their cult leader who was very likely engaging in that horrific action, while simultaneously for years they were the ones propping themselves up as defenders of children, supposedly, and weaponizing very real and serious topics like pedophilia and sexual abuse of minors to make their bigotry more palatable to the general public, like painting every trans person as a groomer, for example, and trying to kickstart this moral crusade among the public against a group of people who, by and large, don't engage in that disgusting behavior. And with more of MAGA coming out of the woodwork and saying, you know what, grown men having sex, quote-unquote, with underage girls is actually a-okay, I hope more and more people see through the false pretense that MAGA actually cares so much about protecting children. Especially if whenever Ghislaine Maxwell makes her statement and says, no, Trump was actually not involved in this sex trafficking ring, it was actually only conveniently those who Trump deems as political enemies who were involved, and MAGA eats it up and she receives a pardon, or at the very least a reduced sentence. This is a person who was Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman. She procured a lot of the underage girls who he trafficked. She very likely engaged in the sexual abuse of these minors herself. She is on year 3 of a 20-year prison sentence for participating in the trafficking of minors. If it gets to the point where she receives a pardon or a reduction in her sentence for saying the things that Trump and his administration want her to say, and MAGA, despite for years harping on about Epstein, treat this as some sort of victory, I hope this will be treated as a permanent stain on not only Trump himself and his administration, but the MAGA movement as a whole. You don't get to just hand-wave away the sexual abuse of minors just because the guy that you backed for a decade at this point very likely engaged in those same disgusting actions himself. And I don't want them to ever live this fiasco down, especially those who have been actively defending Trump throughout this whole thing. You can call this wishful thinking, and maybe it is, but this fiasco has lasted for a lot longer than I thought it would last, and this is still going strong with no signs of it calming down, and the general public can take whatever Ghislaine fucking Maxwell says at face value, right? Right? We shall see, I suppose. And one more thing, I've also seen a lot of stupid deflection from people. What about Bill Clinton and any Democrat who may have been involved in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes? Yes, throw Bill Clinton and any Democrat who also participated in Epstein's crimes in prison as well. Trump and Bill can share a jail cell together, I don't fucking care. Anyone, regardless of who they are and what their party affiliation is, who can be linked to Epstein's crimes, deserves to never see the light of day again. That's the principled stance that everyone should have. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.